when I land in the hotel, the first thing I do, Friday, I get to New York, 9 p.m., straight in the gym. No questions asked.
Straight in.
Straight in the gym, eat dinner, quick nap, play the show, minimize the alcohol, zero drugs.
Yep.
I've basically done zero drugs my entire career too. So I think that's a factor there. But,
Sure.
And then wake up the next morning, hydrate, eat a healthy breakfast, next city, land, gym, very you got to set up that regimented schedule for yourself.
Neighborhood. Art supply.
So I think maybe I know so much about you and your story just from, our collaborations and working together, but I don't think I know the beginning. I don't think I know, where did music, where did that come into your life? What are your early memories of music?
I think the first thing I played in the school band in middle school. I played saxophone.
Yep.
It was second or third chair saxophone or whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
It was just normal stuff, nothing crazy. And then in middle school too, though, do you remember, of course, we came up in the era of watching MTV and consuming music videos, and that's how we found new music.
Sure.
And then, do you remember MTV Spring Break?
Of course,
right?
Yeah, of course.
What middle schooler wasn't trying to watch that, right?
Totally.
And then there was the DJ on there was DJ Scribble or something.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right.
DJing these crazy parties, just scratching, hip hop, cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I saw that. I was like, I want to be a DJ, man.
Yeah.
Because I was he was playing cool records and I fell in love with hip hop at the time. And then I was I remember I asked my mom for Christmas one year, I was like, can I get some turntables or whatever? And she's like, yeah, sure. So we bought
while you were in middle school?
Yeah, I was in 8th grade.
Oh, wow.
And so we got the shittiest Gemini turntable set, the basic mixer with the 2-channel mixer.
Oh, the DJ in a box, setup.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that Gemini did.
So it was the really basic turntables with the just 2-channel mixer.
Yep.
And that was it.
Yep.
And then got some hip hop vinyls. So, that was in the early 2000s. So I just remember I had The Chronic and Nas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just got these turntables with these hip hop vinyls. And I was like, okay, there's one VHS tape in the box. And so plug it in and I'm trying to learn how to DJ off this one VHS tape in the middle of Jupiter Farms, Florida, which I don't know if you know where Jupiter Farms, Florida is, but there's not much music culture in Jupiter Farms, Florida.
Yeah.
And I watched the videotape a couple times and then I sat there and tried to figure it out. And I just had nobody to teach me. There was no YouTube. Obviously, the internet was barely functioning at that time.
Right.
And I just got a little frustrated, tried to DJ for a year, got some basic cutting and stuff down, but nothing, I couldn't really figure out how to DJ very well. And then I just put it in the attic and that was it.
Where were you DJing? Were you
in my room?
Oh, in your room.
I was
so
just
you weren't
in my bedroom.
Going out. You weren't going to other 8th grade
in my
parties.
bedroom, watch the VHS tape, try to hip hop scratch battle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, fuck this is too hard. Can't figure this out. I have no one to teach me. The closest city where I can go to find maybe some sort of instructor, if my mom even cares to take me there, is Miami, Florida, an hour away.
Right.
And so I was like, fuck it, I'm done. And then I quit. And then I tried, and then I get to college. And then I remember my friends started working in nightlife, my college friends and stuff. And I was going out a lot more and stuff. And I started getting exposed to nightlife. And we started hearing electronic music. And it was that wave of that we love so much is, that indie dance wave in the late 2000s, that kind of Bloghouse vibe. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, what is this sound? And then I kept seeing the DJs and these parties pop up all over. You guys obviously had a successful party out here at the time, which we saw in Florida. And it was an inspiration for me to create a party with my friends. And then I was like, I want to learn how to DJ again. I was like, wait, I have these turntables that are been sitting in my attic since middle school.
Yeah.
So I literally grabbed them, dusted them off, drove home one weekend to visit my family, took them out of the attic, put them back in my car, drove back to college. And then one of my friends, this guy, DJ Nims from Milo and Otis, I knew he DJ'd because he would DJ at some of the house parties we were at and some of the local bars and stuff. And I was like, hey, can you show me how to use these things? He's like, yeah, bro. And he just taught me how to DJ. And that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Florida your whole life? Like, were you born in Florida? And then
I was born in Denver, but I didn't live there very long. But so I grew up my entire life in Florida, basically.
in Florida.
Yeah.
And then were your parents, were they creatives?
Not at all.
What kind of music were they listening to when you were younger?
So my dad didn't really listen to music.
Okay.
He was more of like he liked to read books.
Yeah.
He would read these like bodybuilding magazines.
Yeah.
He was like a bodybuilder back in the day.
Yep.
So I just remember growing up, we just see stacks of like these like Muscle Man magazines.
Yep.
And then my mom, she would listen to, her family was from the South. So her family was from like Kentucky, Tennessee. And so that we listen to a combination of like country and then just like the classic 90s shit, just like jock jam stuff was like that dance era. She would like, I just remember my mom doing like aerobics, listening to that shit.
Yeah.
And then it would be like Mariah Carey and that kind of stuff too.
Sure.
So it wasn't really that much, fancy music culture going on, just a little combination of the 90s classics and some country.
Sure. But did you feel like, I think music is going to play a really big role in my life? Or was music just like something you were doing like for fun and you thought you had a different path?
No, I just like, at that time I was learning how to be a DJ, LimeWire and stuff in middle school even.
Yeah.
LimeWire became this thing and I got really into the computer and like digital music on the computer. So it was like LimeWire, Napster. So I was like really into that and I was like downloading all the music.
Yep.
But I felt like I was super ahead of the curve in my school. So then I kind of became the mixtape guy at school. Like, oh, we're having the party this weekend when I got to high school.
Yeah.
Henry, bring the CDs.
Yeah.
So I'd have to burn all the CDs because I had all the music and stuff. And then I was like, I was more or less like a little bit of the music curator for the school parties.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of DJing without DJing.
Right.
But I just became obsessed with just like finding new cool music and downloading music and just exploring that stuff. And so I guess you could say that's how it...
Yeah, that was actually, it's funny because that was my first business. So my first business was...
You sold mixtapes?
I was selling mixtapes
No way. What kind?
Out of my locker.
Oh my God.
And so, what it would be is that like initially it started with the Marshall Mathers LP. Yeah. And it's like, okay, this is really popular. I'll just burn these and like sell them for $10. But I was like, doing like, I made the cover, for it. And then I would like shrink wrap it. And then I would put like a sticker on it. But then, I found that it was like, they want, the Wu-Tang double disc or Chronic 2001. But then I like started going to like different people that were like part of the different factions, I guess, of the school, where it's like you sort of have popular girls and then like the sports dudes. And I would just ask them like, hey, if you could put together like the ultimate mixtape, the ultimate like jock jam, thing, like what would you want on the playlist? And so they would tell me and I'd be like, cool. So I'd give them one for free. And then I'd say, hey, just tell your friends that they can come, buy this from me. And so that was like, and I was just doing that out of my locker. And in this era, the same amount of time as the length of the CD was how long it took to burn. So if it was 60 minutes, it took 60 minutes. If it was 90 minutes, it took 90 minutes. So what I would do is at night, because I was like one of the only kids in my high school to have a CD burner, I would set it up and I'd have an alarm that every hour would go off. And just in the middle of the night, I'd wake up, go over, tired, switch the CD out, put like the next one in. And then I'd have like whatever, a stack of 8 new things to take to school.
I did almost the exact same thing. Okay. So you were light years ahead of me with your business processes. What I did is I took the orders. So I was in high school and I'd wrote down, so you want a CD? Yeah. Write down the songs you want on the CD. So I'd write down 10 songs. I'd go home and I'd have to download the songs for people.
Yeah.
But do you remember how long the downloads took?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like I had to find these songs and I have to download them. So to make one CD, it was like painful. But every person's CD was custom. I remember I maybe sold them for like $20, $25. Did that for a little bit. And then I think like people started to get like, word started to spread and people were like, thought it was shady or something. So I think I stopped.
Right.
But I did this similar thing for a little bit too.
That's amazing. Yeah. And then were you throwing parties? You're like the sort of school DJ, but you're like curating the music. But when did you guys start throwing parties? Is that college?
I hope my mom doesn't watch this, but it was in high school.
Okay.
So high school, like I lived out in the middle of like nowhere.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So I lived like furthest isolated basically in my entire school friend group. So we lived this place called Jupiter Farms. Like it's like dirt roads going in and you drive through and just like the driveway. Like I remember growing up when I have to like take out the trash.
Yeah.
I like walk at least a quarter mile to take the trash out.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty far.
Yeah.
And so like when people would come to my house, the people knew that they were coming to my house, I think. And the parents knew like they could just stay there and nobody was going to drive.
Yeah.
And so everybody would just park their cars on the lawn, I guess you could say. It's not really a lawn.
Yeah.
And, 100 people could come over and park their cars. And I was just throwing these like crazy parties, man. When their parents would, they'd be out of town.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started. And then I realized I was like, also a point of insecurity. Like I was a very subpar kid at basically everything, like at school, average athlete. I could play every sport, but average.
Sure.
Not the first pick, maybe like fifth pick.
Yep.
And so I realized like, oh, if I throw these parties, I can get social status.
Yes.
And so I thought that was cool at the time. And I kept throwing the parties. And then, you walk into school the next day and everybody's trying to talk to you and they want to be your friend and stuff. And so I think like that filled like a deep insecurity too. But also too, it also fueled like my passion for creating experiences for people and curating music at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then that's how I got, I think, skewed towards nightlife, even once I got in college as well too.
Yeah. Not only did it give you identity, it gave you like a sense of value.
Exactly.
That it's like, because I had the exact same thing. I literally had like, I started DJ club there because you could have like different clubs and there would be people there like baseball card collecting club or bocce ball was like a club. And so we had DJ club and all we did was just download stuff on Napster and LimeWire for an hour and just a bunch of people sitting around downloading music and like talking about, new CD burners that were coming out or whatever. But it did like being the school DJ because like I would do basketball games and like after football game dances, but just bring in like my parents' home stereo system that would blow 15 or 20 minutes in because you're not supposed to power it and crank it all the way to like, play in a cafeteria. But it gave me like an identity. I'm the school DJ. At this time, I'm like watching sort of teen rom-coms and, the different movies. And it's like, oh, there's this guy who's like the jock. There's this
you have
and
the stereotypes.
and then it's like, oh, like Usher's playing like the school DJ,
Yeah, like you just want to fit in, right? And you just want to find your place in the system, It's like
1,000%. And I was like subpar at all of like I played all these sports and like I was like, okay, but music was something, and just creativity in general was something where I felt more at home there. I felt, just like my taste. And I was confident in like, it's not that it's better or worse, but this is something that I think that this is really good.
Yeah.
And that you like this stuff, but like, have you heard this?
Yeah. I was confident, like, you make the mixtape and you go to the parties. Like, if you guys put this on, this fucking place is gonna be rocking,
Yeah, for sure.
Even in high school.
For sure. Like, this is gonna work.
Yeah, this is gonna...
And you'd have those records. I remember like telling, my friend who would like sort of be helping me organize the CDs at these school dances that it's like, no, not that one. Hold that one. Not yet. Because like that, it's going to go off. We got to slowly sort of like, build it in.
Build the DJ set.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
So then when you were in college, what were you studying?
So I went to college and I was a subpar student again.
Sure.
And I took this major called interdisciplinary studies.
Okay.
And so one of the older brothers in my fraternity was like, yeah, if you do this through this way and this program, you don't have to take all the hard classes. I was like, oh, sign me up. So if you do it this way, you get to skip financial accounting and whatever those nightmare classes were that everybody hates.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to pick 3 minors and the major was 3 minors. But the main one under it was marketing. So I ended up studying marketing, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so when is it year 1, year 2? Like when do those start to happen like in your college experience?
So just went through college, just did the normal stuff, hung out with my friends, had a great time. And then probably towards the end of college is when I went back and got the turntables from my mom's house and then learned how to DJ. Then I started, messing around. I'm in the fraternity. I moved in the fraternity house. I got the turntables and stuff set up there, and everybody's like, "Oh, Henry's the fraternity DJ now." So I would DJ the fraternity events, and then I went, "Oh, let's book them. We can rent out a club and we can throw socials, and then Henry can DJ." And then after that happened, people saw I DJ'd, and then some of my fraternity brothers worked in the bars, and they're like, "Henry, we can have you DJ on Saturday night." And that was my first DJ gig. And I was like, "Wait, what if I just do this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday?" So then I went around and I networked with more people, like started spreading my name out there. And then I was DJing 4 nights a week.
Yep.
And then at the time I was graduating and I was like, wait, I'm DJing 4 nights a week. And I'm looking at how much money I'm making at the time and how much money like an entry level, like, corporate job in Florida was. I was like, dude, if I just do this, like financially, this actually makes sense. So there was a degree of like, running the numbers and like, hey, maybe I can make this work. So me and my friends started a promotion company too. And we promoted this night called Riot Wednesdays, which is a funny name. But it ended up being like one of the first strictly electronic parties at the college at UCF. And we built that from the ground up, like just had to learn everything. Just like, I remember, I had to put, the drill. You had to put flyers in people's mailboxes, flyers on the cars. At the time, Facebook had just come out with Facebook ads. So this was like in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Facebook ads was brand new, basically. And so I didn't know jack shit about Facebook ads, and I just figured out how to use it. And I would run these ad campaigns. Hey, come to this, electronic dance music party at UCF. And I ran a couple of ad campaigns, didn't even spend that much money, and people would just literally show up off the ads. And then I had the flyers, and then we had a word of mouth with the fraternity, and then we handpicked the staff, all the way from the door girl to the bartenders to the opening DJs. And in about like 6 months, we just had this party just like absolutely popping off, where people were just driving 2 hours from all over Florida to attend this party. And it was the appeal of it was we're like, hey, we want this shit like super sweaty, super fun, grassroots. Like we don't want the fancy DJ booth. So we took the DJ booth. This was before I'd even seen a boiler room or seen like anything else. And we took the DJ booth and we put the DJ booth in the middle, and we would let the fans surround the DJ booth.
Yep.
And we had this like 360 thing going on too. And we didn't even realize like, and we just wanted it to feel really fun and grassroots and interactive and stuff. And yeah. And then, so that's how basically I got my start. And that party took me to then get booked on to other places, and then eventually moved out to LA.
Ever wonder how to truly cut through the noise and get your music to a broader audience? The Cult Creatives is a niche agency servicing the communities and brands surrounding the spaces of music and fashion. Our unique backgrounds of being highly involved with some of the largest music and fashion brands in the world gives us a unique perspective on how to connect creatives with their audiences. We offer a variety of services, including creative direction, design, photography, videography, and strategy. Head to thecultcreatives.com to learn more. The Cult Creatives, not to be replicated. But if you try, we wouldn't blame you.
Okay, so then while you're throwing this party and it's like, okay, I think I'm going to do this. I think this is like, I think I can make a run at this, at least for now, and see like what happens. When does production, okay, I'm playing other people's music, but maybe I should make something of my own and contribute that. Is that like after you get to LA, or are you starting to have like those kind of thoughts in Florida?
In Florida. So we had this awesome crew of people. So we had Nims and Graham from Milo Notice, Dallas K, my other friend Zach, and our other friend Nick that did it. But anyways, the Milo Notice guys, obviously really talented producers. Same with Dallas.
Yep.
And they kind of just literally show me, the first time I opened up Ableton was with them, and they showed me to make music. And I was like, oh, these guys are making music. I was like, I should probably learn too. And then we had a guy named Nick who would bring the lighting and CO2 systems to the nights. So he worked for a production company, and he just was like down to support up and coming DJs in the city. And so he would bring the CO2, and he would bring like the neon lights and stuff that the production we needed for our venue or whatever. And then I remember we were at a show one night, and he like ripped me outside. He's like, I need to talk to you. He's like, Henry, he's like, if you want to get out of the city, he's like, you got to learn how to make your own music. I was like, he literally grabbed me out of a Tiesto show. We were like leaving a Tiesto show in the parking lot, and he was just having this like super serious conversation with me.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember it. He's like, if you don't make your own music, you're never going to get out of here. I was like, fuck.
Wow.
And then I was like, every day I went home, and I was like, okay, I got my party on Wednesday. I'm DJing Wednesday through Saturday every week. I was like, I can wake up, I can make music almost every single day till 10 p.m. Mm-hmm. And I just did that.
You said before we started recording, you were talking about like that everyone should throw a party at least once, because there's so much that you can learn just from the experience of like, okay, how do you get people to come to this party? And then like what kind of experience they're going to have, who gets paid? What do you feel like you learned from that experience that, you'll still use today in how you make and create things?
Oh, I mean, it's basically a mini business, you know what I mean? So it's like you learn every aspect that you need to know. And it's kind of like this microcosm of like society as a whole. So like if you go into nightlife, it's like you have to deal with crazy people. You have to deal with drunk people. Then I had to like, at the end of the night, me and the club owners would be in the back and we'd have to count money together. And it teaches you like, okay, how are we distributing the money? Who gets paid what? And so when you're young, you need to learn those hard, real business skills. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it was that. And then it was like, okay, what's going on with the flow of the music? Who's playing? We'd have to like make sure, like we had our friend Zach who played this awesome like indie dance set every time. And we want the indie dance from 9 p.m. to 10:30 because it's just sets up the floor great, right? And then we want our other guy, Kilogram, playing the dubstep the last 30 minutes because that closes the night good. So we had to curate that. And then we had to bring the production guy in and set up the CO2. And then like, how are we getting people in? Who's doing the flyers? Who's doing the graphic design? Who's the special guest? There's so many different things. It's just this microcosm of like this little business world. And like, once you figure out how to do that, it's just so many little lessons in it. And I think that's why it's so valuable.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so then it's like you sort of go to, the business school of nightlife.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, you start seeing there's your local DJ, and then there are DJs that are traveling the world. And you kind of realize that it's like, all right, that's happening because it's not just, this person's a really good DJ. It's that they have songs that are quote unquote like hit songs, in this community. And then there are people that will buy tickets to go and see them just because they want to hear those songs and they want to see what else they're going to play. Talk to me about early days of like producing music and like trying to get it out, to the world.
So that was like, I would say SoundCloud era.
Yep.
It's like early SoundCloud era. And so like the game was you do like at the time, I think I was making like more like, I started out making like more like electro house sound. So like it was like make electro house remixes of some of like the trending pop songs, rap songs, indie songs, whatever it was. And then send them to the music blogs. And then the music blogs would post about them. And then people would download them. And then people would find you. Right. And then it was like the Hype Machine thing too, where you try to get it to chart on.
Yep.
Yeah. You try to get it on charting on Hype Machine. A lot of people don't know what Hype Machine is. It's like this aggregator of blogs where the blogs would have like post the music and then they would have a chart based on popularity for that. So I remember one time I had put out a couple remixes on SoundCloud and I got I did like a Mike Snow remix or something and I got it charting. I think it was like #1 on Hype Machine at one point. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then I really grinded those remixes to start building everything. And then throughout those remixes, I was able to send it out to bigger DJs. Some DJs at the time, you could message them on SoundCloud and they would write you back. So I remember like DJ Chucky and DJ Rehab, they were like checking their SoundCloud messages.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, here's a new thing. And I remember I just started to get some of those SoundCloud remixes played on some of the radio shows and podcasts and stuff. And then that turned into DJs playing them out at their sets. And then I was like, oh, now I need to go over to originals, make originals and try to get signed to record labels. And then me and my friend made a song and we sent it over to Hardwell's label at the time. And then Hardwell signed it to his label Revealed in like 2013. And that was like the first big record.
It sounds like, when you tell it sort of from this view.
Yeah, I'm trying to like summarize it in my head. I was like
retrospectively, it's like, oh yeah, it's like, you would just like reach out to like DJ Chucky and send him a message and like send him your song. I feel like, when you're a creative person, a lot of the times what makes you creative is that you're sensitive to the world. Like you can sense, that it's like, oh, this is something, this makes me feel a way. And whether you're watching a movie or listening to a song, but I think sometimes that sensitivity, and if it's paired with insecurity or the voices that you have inside of your head, it can be really tough to, would I send some DJ that like I'm a huge fan of? Like, they're not going to care about like my song. Like yeah. Like talk to me about like, I mean, there's so many just in the last 5 minutes. It's like, you start a party, you're getting up and DJing.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot more like nuance to it.
Yeah, but there's all these like things where it just seems like, oh, you'd have to be so confident to like do something like that. Do you feel like you had confidence or do you feel like maybe you didn't, but you just sort of fought against it? I'm going to do it anyway.
You know what it was, man? I remember one time me and my friends were opening for Avicii and they had a guy on tour with them. Two guys actually. They went by the name of Kazette. I don't know if you remember Kazette. They were like electro house, bass house duo. And so we were opening for Avicii, and then I was in the green room and I got to meet Kazette. And one of the guys, I was just like, hey man, we're local DJs. Like, do you have any tips for us? And he's like, here's what you do, bro. He's like, you need to send thousands of emails. He goes, don't stop sending your shit out. He goes, I don't know how he worded it, but it was basically like, if you think you've sent enough emails to DJs and record labels, you haven't sent enough, and do 10 times more. And I was like, oh shit. So I literally, he told me that. And I was like, if that's what I got to do to be on tour with Avicii or whatever, like I'm fucking in. And so it's like kind of like the guy told me that advice. And then I realized too, then through doing everything, I was going so hard on the marketing side. So I knew that's what I had to do to get to where I wanted to go. I'm going to do it,
Were you seeking the discipline of like whatever the pursuit is that you were like trying to go after? Because that's like somebody saying like, what you need to do is you need to send 1,000 emails.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, that's the discipline.
Yep.
Is that like, I make stuff and then I just send
it's like by any means necessary. It's like, if that's what I got to do, I'm in. If I was willing to do anything to make the dream happen, you know what I mean? And
where does by any means necessary, like where does that come from internally? Do you think that it was just something you were born with? Do you think that like your parents hooked you up? Like why do you think you have that?
Dude, that's a good question. I've actually thought about it before. I think it's something just built in from seeing my dad and uncle and everything they went through in their life, because they endured some pretty crazy struggles in their life. And, they came over here. My uncle came over here from China in like post, right after the Great Depression, actually.
Yep.
And my dad was born here, and they grew up in a small town in Arkansas, and they were the only Chinese family in the whole town. They had a very, very hard life.
Yes.
Very hard life. This was pre-civil rights, and you were the only Asian family in a city in Arkansas. They got beat up at school every day.
Mm.
Every single day beat up at school. My grandpa, who I never got to meet, unfortunately, but he would have to sit in a rocking chair in the living room with a shotgun like this. And he would sleep there like this. They would tell me stories of this. So the kids and the grandma would be in the bedrooms, and he would have to sit out here with a shotgun because they would have to protect themselves. And so like all the stories, they just told me the craziest stories. Like they would get beat up at school every day. And then as a product of growing up in that type of environment, my uncle, who was the oldest in the family, he was like the family protector. He became a collegiate world champion boxer, basically, off that. And then he went on to become like a pretty famous like kung fu martial artist. He was like an original training partner of Bruce Lee. And so he went on to do that with his life. And then same with my dad. My dad went on to become like, he was like runner up in all these like Mr. Olympia bodybuilding competitions. And then he pursued bodybuilding as a product of just like they had to find these things as a means of survival. You know what I mean? So I think like growing up, like they just told me all these crazy stories. Like my uncle would just be like, yeah, one day I had to fight 3 guys because they called me like racist names or whatever.
Yeah.
And he'd tell me these stories how he would just be like knocking people out left and right because he was a boxer and people didn't know. So they would come and pick on him in the street in the city, and he would just start knocking people out. And then eventually he created a name for himself where everyone would say like, don't mess with the Chinaman because he's going to knock you out.
Man. And
I think that's where it comes from overall.
Because there's so much, I keep using this word, but there's so much discipline like around you. It's like, bodybuilding is a discipline.
Yeah.
Martial art is a discipline. These are things that you do, small incremental things daily. And over time, it's like you don't become, Mr. Olympia, overnight. Like it's something that is a lifestyle design over decades.
Totally.
That it's like now you've built up, to become this thing. So just by, proximity of like you being around it, then it's like, oh, I'm going to pursue something that I wonder if it's like just natural that it's like you're seeking, well, what's the discipline in this? What's the thing that I can do over and over and over that will lead me results? On the other side, that may just be like a
no, dude. I had never thought about that way. You actually like the way you just worded it. It makes perfect sense, and I think that's exactly what it is. And I actually never thought about it that way. So thank you for you kind of pieced that together.
Yeah, because I think it's like I'm so interested in like because I think that we both work with young artists and like people that are sort of getting into different creative fields, and I think that they'll think well that so and so just won the lottery of like being born with rich parents or, parents that were like very encouraging, or they don't have like the story that I have. And that's all true. But it's also like, I think that by having a vision and you're like, I want to try to do this thing. And yes, everybody like has their baggage, but I think that your brain, it's so interesting because you're looking at like patterns, maybe how your peers or like, other people are doing something, applying that to yourself. But it's like, I always try to get to the why you assess things that way and like why you moved that way.
Dude, that's exactly what it is. Like, I remember even when my dad, well into his 80s, he was basically still going to the gym.
Wow.
So I remember like growing up, my early memories of my dad, it's like the big workout belt thing, for the squats and the deadlifts and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like workout belt goes in the gym bag, protein shake in. Dad's going to the gym, rain, shine, doesn't matter what the hell's going on. Dad's going to the gym. He's never going to miss a day in the gym, and that type of discipline. He also worked for the military as well. So he was just built different, man. He was just first one in, last one out. He retired from the military. He worked in the Pentagon. And so he had that military discipline as well too. And so, I think maybe just growing up, I think I subconsciously, like, I'm just lucky. I just feel really lucky enough to have these, older role models in my life where I could see that type of discipline.
Talk to me about stand-up. So this was, I was already familiar with you, but I always say like with music that like people would send me records or I'd hear a song. And to me, it was like, this is how my hierarchy would go, that that's cool. And like I hear something, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Then there's I'd put this in my set. I think that this is a good record. Then it's like, oh, this would be one of the big records in my set. And then the top of it would be, I'm opening with this. This is the record that is going to set the precedent for like how my set is going to go. And for the greater part of 2 years, I opened with stand-up.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Like that was like, okay, DJ before does this, but then I'm going to come in, I'm going to do the roll effect where I'm going to loop his record, roll. Okay, and done. So that's done. And then I'm going to start your record. Tell me about like where you are, in production at that time. Is it something that like you knew you had something, you had no idea, you're just like, oh, it's another one? Like, talk to me about stand-up.
I don't know. I think, obviously there were some samples in that record. There's some hip hop samples in there. So I was really like listening to a lot of the music coming out at the time. Remember on that big room wave, and a lot of the big room stuff, it all sounded the same. And that was the sound. So I was like, how can I do this sound and bring in other sounds? So I had like these like brass horns, it's like, maybe it's because I played in the band. I don't know why I use it, but I gravitated towards like, how do I use these hip hop samples and how do I bring them into big room or whatever? And so I was just looking for all ways to just make my music a little bit like left of center. I forget what book it is. Sorry.
No worries.
There's a book and it says like you want to balance the familiar but different. And I was always trying to just edge it a little bit to the left, but something that could still, be working really good live. And I think that was kind of the inspiration behind stand-up. It's just really digging for those unique samples. And I was like, this sound just really needs a refresh. And so like, how can I make the big room kind of festival?
Skull Candy products are made for an on-the-go lifestyle. Headphones, earbuds, and speakers all deliver premium quality sound and a unique sonic experience tuned to you. With active noise-canceling technology, Skull Candy products are sweat, water, and dust resistant. Test for yourself with free shipping on orders over $99. Be prepared for skull-thumping, bone-rattling sound. For the ultimate immersive audio experience, choose Skull Candy. Break free from ordinary audio. Skull Candy, for your head.
Like from the beginning, like when you started making music, do you feel like in the beginning you're just like, I just need to render something that sounds like a song?
Yeah, that's how it is at first.
At first. But then it's like you move towards like, okay, I do want something that's gonna stand out or like, be unique. So everything's like this. And like I do want, my record to be played against other records and not be so different that like, it just won't, somebody won't play it because it's so different. But like talk to me about that. Cause I think that that's another, like that there's another element of confidence that comes with doing something that's a little different and, being unique. Cause the easy way is like, oh, somebody else, they have a hit. It sounds like this. I can just make one of those.
Yeah.
But it takes more confidence, I think, to be like, oh, I'm going to kind of throw a weird curveball in this and see.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know what the thought process was at the time when I was doing that. I just was like, oh, I like these sounds. I like this. So let's just put them together. It's pretty simple. But I think a lot of times too, when like artists are like, the first thing you do is you want to copy a sound and you copy your favorite artist, right? And you mimic that and then you learn that. And then the next phase is like, okay, now that I have these skills and I know how to piece together that type of song, it's like, how do I make it different? But like making things like, it never has to be like, you don't have to invent like a completely new sound to have a successful music career. You know what I'm saying? It just needs to be just different enough. You know what I mean? And sometimes I think too, it's just like repositioning and pivoting your sound a little bit. And it can just be something as simple as, yeah, I use this one lead sound and nobody's used this type of lead sound in the record. Or, hey, I use strictly samples from this era of music. And these are the style of samples that I use in my music. It can be the smallest little things can just take your music and just put it slightly left field. You know what I mean?
And do you like intellectualize those things? Like, is it something that you'll say you set those positive constraints for yourself? That it's like, okay, for whatever year, 2017, 2018, I'm only going to do this. This is the thing I'm going to do every time. I'll write different genres and like maybe even different like tempos. I'm kind of playing in this sandbox for where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I definitely made like a conscious effort to do that. And the way I did that was, I remember I started making this folder of like, you have your sample folders and music and stuff like that. I had one folder and it was like my own personal sample collection. And it wasn't that many. It was maybe like 30 or 40 sounds. And I just like used and abused those 30, 40 sounds over. It was like, and I started to get like my sound set. It was like, okay, I had these like brass sounds. And then I had all of these like reggae dancehall samples, even down to the drum fills were like sampled from these like dancehall records and stuff. And there was ad libs, just like one shots from like dancehall reggae and stuff too. And I would just pick from this folder every time and use the same sounds over and over again. So I can make any genre I wanted to, but as long as I was picking 3 or 4 sounds from that folder, I felt like my music started to have some continuity about it. And that's how I started to get a signature sound. So when producers are like, how do I find my signature sound? Start making the folder of stuff that is unrelated to dance music, and then literally just pick and choose from that folder and then try to get some small sounds that are like signature to you. And again, they don't have to be like huge sounds. They don't have to be like the lead sounds, or they don't have to be like a vocalist. It can just be something as small as like one drum shot, one effect sound, and, one little vocal that you maybe just use in like every production,
Yeah, because it's like by having this is what you do every time, and like, you start developing that signature. I think like where we've come, technology and like making music, really making anything, creatively, you can make and do anything now. But in order to have a signature, the way it was like, in our parents' era was that you had a band and your band's sound was comprised of, what does the band have? Like we have one keyboard, we have this one guitar, and this one's like, we sort of use that one. We have this drum kit. You have that drummer, that bass player, that singer with that kind of voice, and that made your sound. But when you're a music producer, it's like, you have unlimited samples, and, synths and like just ways to make things forever. So it's like, of course, like, sometimes I'll go and I'll listen to an artist and like, listen to their SoundCloud or their Spotify. And I'm like, these are all amazing, but they sound like 10 different producers. It doesn't sound like, I don't know your point of view. I don't understand, like, what do you like? I want to know what you like. I want to know your taste. That's part of why someone follows an artist, is because they're like, oh, I like dancehall and I like dance music. Like, and I like EDM. Like, Henry, like, I'm going to follow what he's doing. We seem to like the same things. By constraining yourself, I think that if you're trying to build an identity, sonically or visually, it's like, kind of creating the walls of the sandbox is what's important.
Yeah. And it just has to be for some small things. It doesn't have to be everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about surfing. So tell me, like, when does it come into your life? And like, why is it something that you fall in love with?
I think I started in high school. I was like sophomore in high school. I was like 15 years old. I was like hanging out with some friends, and one of them was a surfer. And they're like, he's like, the waves are good. You guys want to go surfing? I was like, I've never been surfing before. So we went surfing, and it was like, I just remember it was really fucking hard. It was like really hard to like just even balance on the board. And then I caught a wave and I was like, dude, this is so fun. I was like, you catch that first wave. I know that sounds pretty corny, but
Yeah.
you stand up on the first wave, you're like, oh my God. You're like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
What was it? Like, what's the feeling of it?
It's just like you feel weightless and you're just gliding. And it's just like you're in the water. The water is crystal clear blue. You're just hanging out with your friends. You're talking. I just loved everything about it. And then one of my best friends was also a surfer. And then after I had that first time surfing, we would just start going all the time. And then it was also the challenge. So like leading up before like a lot of like the DJ stuff and the music career stuff, I started getting these like hobbies where you could like micro focus on. And they were kind of just like little like what we talked about, like building the discipline before. It's like, how do you build that discipline? And like doing stuff like surfing requires like crazy discipline to like improve at surfing. It's very, very like physically taxing. You have to wake up early. Like it's hard, So I think I learned a little bit of discipline from surfing as well too. But so I would just surf, in the morning, would surf after school. I went to college. I brought my board up to college, and me and my friends just started surfing every day before class. We'd have noon class. We would drive to the beach. We would surf. Come back. We do class. After class, we drive back to the beach, go surfing again. And then, me and my friends just fell in love with it. And then it got to the point we got old enough. We started traveling around the world to go surfing. We're like in college, we're flying to doing like the cheapest, like most like grassroots trips ever to like jungle in Costa Rica, but before people were even really going to Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And we were like sleeping in like mosquito nets and like just like
so cool.
And then we started traveling around for surfing, and yeah, you just get it's a whole lifestyle too. And I think like a funny way to think about it now, I saw something that reminded me of this was like you've seen like the Andrew Huberman stuff. It's like the optimal morning routine. It's like you wake up, you get the sunlight in your eyes, you get the zone 2 cardio, and then you do the cold plunge. It's like, wait.
It's all those.
So you're telling me the surfers have already been doing this. You wake up, you get the sunlight in your eyes, get the zone 2 cardio, cold plunge in the ocean. It's you know what I mean?
And you wonder why you feel amazing.
And then you've like
after you
surfing, like, and then that's why people get addicted to it, because it literally makes you feel good, and it covers the bases on so many like, physical and mental things. So yeah. And then even to this day, like I just went surfing this morning before we'd film this podcast.
Yep. Do you think that, have you noticed like the correlation between surfing and then doing something creative after you surf? That it's like, oh, you've surfed and then you wrote music, and like, how is maybe the experience of writing different?
I mean, I think if anything, like, in music, I think musicians, it's very difficult to find a life balance sometimes. You know what I mean? It's like late hours.
Right.
Late hours, there's partying, there's flights, sitting down in a chair for a long time. It's like really hard to get that other side of your life. So I found that like, I think surfing gives me this like perfect like yin and yang to being a musician. It's like perfect.
Yeah.
So when I go out and I'm like in nature, no phone, exercising, sunlight, in the ocean, the dolphins are swimming by, and then I go write music, and then I'm on a plane, and then I'm doing all these other things. It's just like that perfect balance.
Do you think that your life, if you took away exercise and took away surfing, and you have the same sort of existence, and you're a creative person making music, cruising around, performing, how different do you think your life is?
Oh,
like,
completely different.
Completely different.
Like even the sound of the music I make, the reason why like I'm using so many like, I use like a lot of Caribbean sounds in my music. It's like I grew up in South Florida, so that's a product of that too. But when I was like turned 18, and me and my friends started like traveling to Central America to go travel and stuff, like I got exposed to all this music as well too. So like going to Costa Rica, like Costa Rica has a huge reggae dancehall scene. And obviously there's Latin music there. So I remember like so many times going to Costa Rica and we'd be on these surf trips. It's like, that's what we were listening to. And then you start associate traveling with this specific sound. And then going back in the studio, I think it's like I was always trying to capture a feeling of that kind of like surf travel is in some way, shape, or form, trying to capture that in the music, even though it's like harder dance music, but in a way, like it's just always a piece of it, you know?
But do you think that that's like also the sort of sustainability of like, you know, you've been able to do this for a lot of years now, but like, do you feel like that balance between
100%.
like,
100%. I think a lot of musicians burn out too because they don't have that balance. Like people are all in on music as a musician and it's their end all be all, which I think that's good. Like I think some of the top musicians, you know, that's how it is for sure. But you know, I think for me, having something else that I almost like it more than music.
Sure.
Like if I had to put the two side by side, I love doing music, but I love surfing. I think I love surfing more.
Sure.
So to me, music is like, I can deal with the ups and downs of music because I'm like, oh, I have surfing to, you know what I mean? And so I'm not like all eggs in one basket, just this like sole creative in music. I have this other thing that I love to do so much as well too. And I think that having like that balance again, it takes away from the pressure of music, I think.
Talk to me about that. Talk to me about, so you're going on tour and now you went from, you know, playing your local party and like some of these like, you know, smaller shows to now it's like arenas and the pyro and like the whole thing. And, you know, you're putting your hands up and there's, you know, tens of thousands of people, you know, in front of you. When you have that moment and that feeling where you're like, I made it and like, this is it? Or like, you know, do you feel like there was more pressure now? Like, what was that experience
No,
like?
I felt like I was ready for it, man. I was like, I grinded, I built this party, I did all these things. I'm like, I'm here and I like really enjoyed it. And I was like, but it also at the same time, it exceeded my expectations for like, I never thought like it was going to be like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I never like, I was obviously trying to do that, you know, the whole time. But then you get there and you're like, damn, even today, I look back and I'm like, dude, I already set out to do like, I've already done way more than I even thought I was going to do.
Right.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah. I felt like, I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt like for me, it almost was like the surfing thing where like once it started to happen, then I'm like, I want this all the time. And then I got like greedy for it.
Yeah.
And like, I definitely was like addicted to it. I remember telling my then girlfriend, now wife, I'd be like, I'm like fiending for like a good show. Like I really, I'm like, I want one. And like, you know, you just like want to get in there. It's like, you know, somebody who's training for something and, you know, it's like, oh, whether it's a martial art or a sniper or whatever, you're like, I want something to do, you know, with this thing that I've been, you know, working towards. But I felt like that was unhealthy. Like it was something where it's like, it started to change how I was looking at making the music and how I was like promoting myself. And like talk to me about like your experience of like just being on the other side.
Yeah, there's definitely a degree of like getting addicted to it. Like, you know, I don't think humans are necessarily supposed to be on stage and there's supposed to be like tens of thousands of people. And like, I don't know if you've heard this thing, but like I think musicians are at higher risk of heart attack because of that, actually.
Oh, wow.
So I saw some study sometime. I don't quote me on that because I can't source it
because
exactly,
of like the dopamine and the adrenaline.
That's why a lot of the rock and roll musicians, obviously for other reasons too, but when they come off stage and that contributes to a higher risk of heart attack, actually.
Wow.
So it's not really, I don't think humans are necessarily designed to do that, but I think there is a degree of like, it's a huge dopamine rush to do that though. But then I think managing those come downs with like other activities can also be the key. But yeah, I think you're right about that. You get a little bit addicted to it. You're like, what's the next show? You know?
Right. And I think that like I was addicted to different things. Like I was addicted to the, of course, like, you know, the attention, but I really was addicted to the connection. And like, this is going to sound like name droppy, but like I worked with Moby a little bit and like I'd had this conversation with him and he was like telling me he was working on this book where he was just taking pictures of empty hotel hallways and empty parking lots in the hotels he was staying at. Cause he's like, it's the craziest thing. Yeah. I would go and play a festival and I would play in front of 20 or 30,000 people. And it's like, you feel so connected with this mass of boom. People. Yeah. And you like do this thing with the filter and then just like, you know, you have all those voices that react to something that you're doing. And then, you're ripped away from that. And then you have to go back and sit in a hotel room by yourself and wait for, you know, and then like go to sleep or like wait for your flight or your, you know, ride to come and get you. And that like, you know, how much you're getting then, being on the opposite side of it. And it's late at night, so you don't necessarily like have people you can call, of just like, hey, I just like played this crazy show. Like, you don't want to like wake people up. It does some like weird stuff, to your mind. And I'd be curious of like, it sounds like surfing maybe is one, but like, is there anything else that you feel like has been helpful for you? Because you seem just very even to me, like you, and whether or not you are like that, that's how it seems. Is that like, I think you do a really good job of sort of that balance that you were talking about.
Oh,
but
thanks, man.
What do you think about, advice for other people that may be navigating the ascension?
The first two things is like on your off time when you're not DJing and stuff, it's like, what's your diet like? What's your exercise routine like? It's like, you just got to have those two things figured out. And obviously I saw my uncle and dad do that. And it's like, They were very regimented on their diet. Like my uncle wrote all these Kung Fu books. And one of the books he has is like his workout routine. And he has his workout routine in there that him and like Bruce Lee would like do together. And so I have like the Bruce Lee workout routine in here. And I'm like seeing all this stuff, but like, I think you need to find your version of that. And you just need to just be super regimented with your diet. You go on tour, it's like, sometimes you just have to eat like a hotel burger or whatever. But like when I land in the hotel, the first thing I do Friday, I get to New York, 9 p.m., straight in the gym. No questions asked. Straight in the gym, eat dinner, quick nap, play the show, minimize the alcohol, 0 drugs. Yep. I've basically done 0 drugs my entire career too. So I think that's a factor there. But,
sure.
And then wake up the next morning, hydrate, eat a healthy breakfast, next city, land, gym, you got to set up that regimented schedule for yourself. And then now the last like 5 years of my life, I've also introduced, I do martial arts as well too. So I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I'm sure you've heard all the bros talking about it on Joe Rogan and stuff, but
sure.
it's really been awesome. And I would highly recommend that activity for anybody. And it's just like the biggest, like when you walk on the mat and you have to bow to people and then you have this community of people around you, it's just like, that's missing from a lot of music life. This environment, right? And then there's this hierarchy too. So you have your belt rank and you go into this place and it's like very humbling, first of all. Second of all, there's a known hierarchy and you can't hide anything. So like whatever your skills are on the jiu-jitsu mat, it's like those are your skills. But everybody accepts you for that anyways. And nobody cares if you suck. Sometimes people are really good and stuff. And having this like hierarchy and having it all like laid out on the table in front of everybody is like, that's so much of a different than what goes on in business and in people's careers and especially music and stuff like that. Because you have a lot of people on social media. Nobody knows what anything is like real or not. You know what I mean? Right. Everything is marketing. Everything is like people are acting. You don't know if somebody got an investment from so-and-so to have somebody make all their music for him or whatever the hell it is. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And then you go to this jiu-jitsu gym and it's like everything's just out on the table, wide open, no egos. And some of these people are the kindest people that have no ego, actually. So it's actually quite the opposite of what people may think about like martial arts and stuff like that. So adding that activity in too has just been awesome too, because now I take that with me. I put my gi and my belt and everything in my suitcase. And now when I land in different cities, I Google jiu-jitsu gym.
No way.
And there's this universal like language in jiu-jitsu where it's called the drop-in. So I can just drop in, I can pay $25 and I can go, hey, what's up? I'm Henry from Los Angeles. I train at this gym. You pay $25. Welcome. You step on the mat with people you never even met in your life. Slap, bump, you roll, you train, you have a good time, and then you leave.
Yeah, it's so funny because I remember, and it may not have been the first time that you posted about it, but I remember sort of early on when you found it. And like, this is what's interesting about sort of, knowing you and being friends with you and then sort of watching, the career and things you've done is that I knew that I'm like, oh, he's going to shred at this. Like it's something where it's like, I think once you do that first thing where it's like, there's a level of discipline and sacrifice around it, but then there's a result or something on the other side of it, but it like takes, it's slow.
I love these side quests, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's like, but like through the things that you chose, through your life, these are things that like, surfing is not easy. being a DJ at the level, that you're at is not easy. These are things that take a lot of small moves for like a greater result. But that's like, it is something I think over time you start to become comfortable with, like taking on a new thing, and then adopting, the discipline and the lifestyle around it, and like just kind of leaning into that.
That's true, man. It's the pressure too. Like jiu-jitsu really teaches you how to, this sounds crazy, but like if somebody's behind you and they're choking you, which is like a common submission that people would do.
Yeah, sure.
It's like there's a grown man trying to kill you, basically.
Right. Yes.
And then you are like,
and you've paid $25 to have
paid
to do this.
$25 and you're like a couple seconds away from passing out unconscious, potentially dying.
Right.
And then you just tap quick and it's over. But it's like, that's the maximum level of pressure that a human could be under, right?
Yes.
So you're basically going in every week and you're training to be under the maximum pressure that you can be under technically, right?
Right.
And now, so walk out of that gym and you go out in your life. Oh, the girlfriend broke up with me. I got fired from my job. That's down here.
Right.
Secretly. So you're kind of training yourself to be under pressure in a controlled environment. And I think doing really, really hard things in that way, I know that kind of sounds crazy and I know it's not for everybody, but I think that really helps deal with the pressure of life, deal with the pressure of, social situations, your job, especially, if it's a musician.
It's almost like the harder the situations are that you put yourself and your mind in, the easier that life can become, because it like changes the volume knob on like the other things that like you're experiencing.
Yeah. And so I feel like when I found that in my career, I was going through a pivot. I didn't know what it was like 2018. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm like not playing as many shows as I was playing in 2014, 15. Like, what am I going to do? And then social media pops up and then all of a sudden you got haters on your social media and stuff. It's like, you have to find a way to build grit and build confidence and stuff. And for me, it was just the perfect activity at the perfect time to do that for me, I think so.
What if there was a school where you could learn to produce music just like your favorite artists, using the best equipment and techniques the industry has to offer? Enter Icon Collective. For nearly 2 decades, Icon Collective has dedicated itself to turning aspiring artists into global sensations. Countless artists such as Slander, Nightmare, Jaws, Keizo, and many more have graduated from Icon Collective. Icon Collective is a school created by artists for artists. Discover the ultimate music education experience. You'll be mentored by top industry professionals who will help you refine your skills and elevate your techniques to a pro level. You'll join a vibrant community of like-minded musicians and artists. Unlock your creative genius and embark on a transformative adventure. Head to iconcollective.edu to learn more.
I think as maybe the last thing is, I remember during COVID that it was a just a very interesting time for music, period. And you started to see that it's like, oh, okay, these people really love DJing because they're DJing on Twitch, to 5 people.
Yeah.
And then other people, it's like, you didn't really see them. And I just remember kind of clocking, I'm like, you're going to see the people who really, really love this and sort of need to do it because it's just part of who they are. But what was something that was interesting during COVID is like, we were connecting, but like not, it's not like we're like talking every day, but I was like watching, like what you were doing. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Because I felt like during COVID, when everybody was quiet, you were just like firing. Like you were like releasing music and like just going really, really hard. Talk to me about like the thought process. Was that like another thing that you kind of like strategized, or was it like a natural thing that it's like everybody's pausing and then Henry's going double or triple like while everybody else is paused? And then of course, like, things start to open back up and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Like now, like his positioning, just like everybody's been quiet and he's just been sort of quietly, slowly like building up this audience, like through pandemic. But yeah, just talk to me about the choice to do that in that moment.
I think it was a conscious decision. So like me and my team were like, okay, first of all, that was the craziest time fucking ever.
Yeah.
I had to make some like really tough personal decisions at that time too. So my life was like extremely chaotic.
Yes.
And I remember me and my team talked about it. We're like, what if we put out music every month as normal and we come out of like, maybe it's going to be over in a year, maybe it's going to be over in 2 years. We don't fucking know. But like, what if we just keep putting out music every month and pretend like nothing was wrong and we just come out of this thing stronger? We're like, people are at home, they're listening to the music. So I'm like, if we stay consistent with the music, things are going to open up and boom, we're going to be ahead of the curve. And then you're right. A lot of people were like, I'm not putting out any music because I don't want to waste these records. I'm like, who cares? I'm just going to make new ones. And I remember one of my biggest records that helped this new phase of my career, I really, first of all, in like 2020, I really kind of found my new sound a little bit, which like I had made like electro house, bass house stuff previously, but then I was in big room and then I'd experimented with like Moombahton and dancehall and reggae and stuff too in productions actually. And then so when it got to 2020, I had time to like reassess my sound. And I was like, I love bass house because it's what I was doing before, but it's like a new wave of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember I made this record with this artist named Knock 2, who's, he's one of like the coolest artists out there right now by far.
Yeah.
And we connected in the pandemic. And I remember I sent him I was like, hey man, I found your remix on SoundCloud. I love your stuff in like 2019.
Still messaging people on SoundCloud. Or you just...
I found him on SoundCloud.
Oh, okay. You told him this. Oh, you told him
I was like, oh my God, this kid is so talented. And I was like, I would love to make a record with this kid. I made this idea. I shot it over to him. He literally sent it back in like 2 days and it was just so good. And that became our record, What's the Move? And I remember we were sitting there and he's like, I don't know if we should put it out or whatever. And I convinced him. I was like, dude, I think we should put it out. Fuck it. And so it was July 2020 that record came out and we put it out and it got a good response on social media, whatever. A year goes by, his career starts taking off. He gets out on tour, he's smashing it. And that record just got this like second life to it. But we decided to put that out and we made a conscious decision with Dimmock to put that out in the middle of the like smack dab summer 2020. And I think that was like one of like the best decisions that both of us could have made for our career because that was his biggest records at the time that helped the rest of the stuff that he did after that. And then myself too, that gave me like a new invigoration for my career too. And also like I had changed my sound in 2022 to going back a little more towards that bass house sound too.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that it was definitely a conscious decision around that time to just stay consistent and put out music.
It just reminds me of like when like investors, it's like when, a crash will happen.
Yeah.
That it's like everybody just freaks out, right? And then it's like sell, sell, sell. Everybody's freaking out. Where like the really good investors are like, oh, no, this is our time.
This is,
like,
they're waiting for that.
This is like a sale is happening.
You got to be a contrarian to have that mindset though.
Absolutely. And I think that that's like some of the magic. I do think that most of the artists that I've seen through the years and also like just people that I personally kind of relate to and respond to are the people that like if everybody's going this way, they go that way.
Yeah.
And that's actually, even like when, we were like booking the party, way back in the day, it's like if this thing became super popular, I'd almost like look at like, this is really popular. I want to take I would imagine like a red bouncy ball. And I'm like, I'm going to throw it against that as though it's a wall. And I'm going to see how far it bounces the other direction. And that's probably what we're going to do. That is like, cool. That's because it's happened already. Like it, and the most interesting things are usually the things that are the revolution, a reaction to the thing that has happened previously. It's like my dad would always talk about like a fat tie, skinny tie. That like if you look at like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it's like 50s is a fat tie, 60s is a skinny tie, 70s is a fat tie, 80s is a skinny tie. He's like, why do you think is?
That's hilarious. And you know what? I have my dad's entire tie collection and there's a lot of fat ties in there.
90s, because people had to sell more ties. So they had to say, no. That's your grandpa's. Your grandpa's the skinny tie. Fat tie is the thing right now.
That's hilarious.
Oh no. Your dad, he's skinny jean guy. You're baggy jean. And every generation will go through it. And so it's the same thing with music. That it's like there has to be a reaction and that each generation wants to be different than the generation before. Oh no, that's my older brother's music. I'm this.
Do you see what the kids are wearing now? It's exactly what I wore in middle school.
For sure. It's the it's the full cycle because it's a 20-year cycle.
20-year cycle.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
10 years is like not enough. It's like new thing, but I'm like, I see what the kids are wearing. I was like, dude,
Yeah.
This is what we wore in middle school.
I know.
Isn't that
And I
crazy?
remember my dad being like, I should have like kept all my old clothes.
I came out of college. I was a skinny jean guy. Now look, I got the.
Yep. It's fully back. I honestly, man, like I can't thank you enough for like being a part of this pod. And like, I truly am such a huge fan of you. I love you so much and like have so much admiration for you and your lifestyle and like just the everything that is Henry Fong. Like I genuinely am such a fan. And I do think that like anybody listening, like I do look at Henry, even for me personally, whether or not, like I'm sure he has all his, own voices and, self-critic and all that. But like, he really is sort of a North Star for me of just like, I feel like whether it's actually true, like it looks as though like you've really figured out that balance. And I feel like you're just doing it for like the right reasons. And like, can't thank you enough for like being on this and being a part of it.
I appreciate that too, man. And I'm so glad too, over our friendship all the years, you've taught me so many valuable lessons too, that I've been able to take into my career. And even now, I have students that I teach too. And a lot of the things that you've taught me about, whether it's branding, marketing, anything, like you've taught me so many valuable lessons. I'm find myself now regurgitating a lot of the stuff that you taught me to my students.
Oh.
And so that's super cool, man. And I always
appreciate that, man.
You guys basically created a party too that I copied. So that's how much of an influence you are.
For sure. That's what it's all about.
I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, man, for sure. That's what it's all about. But love you, dude. Thank you for doing this.
Right on, man.
All right, man. Thanks.